to consult and to invest both. And top executives of Ukrainian government, President, Prime Minister, Board of Ministers, and the idea that the Council should meet once or twice a year.
Meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren, Szanowny Panie i Panowie, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. We are starting our presentation and discussion. Can you all hear me? Everything fine? Okay. Please show up if there is a problem. I beg your understanding, we switch to English, and our topic will be this book, The Fourth Republic, and its author, Mr. Boris Ложкин, here in the middle of our three panelists, and we will also discuss current situation in Ukraine, mostly in political and economic terms. Our guests are, from left to right, Vladimir Fedoriным, a journalist from Kiev, who, together with Mr. Ложкин, wrote this book. Next, Boris Ложкин. Mr. Ложкин is from Kharkiv, so a mostly Russian-speaking town in northeast Ukraine, the second largest town in Ukraine, 70 kilometers from the so-called contact line, or others call it the front line, and the former capital of the Ukrainian Republic. Yes, first capital. Mr. Ложкин was a businessman, and he was especially active in media business. I, as a journalist dealing with Ukraine, appreciate when good magazines and good newspapers are made, and one of it was a correspondent in Kiev, which was, in my account, the best magazine in Ukraine then, and Mr. Ложкин was a co-owner of this publishing house. And now, by the way, Correspondent is in other hands, and the team of Correspondent is now making an equally good journal, which is called Novoye Vremya, or New Times. Mr. Ложкин, from 2014 till August 2016, so nearly till now, was the man behind the Ukrainian president. He was the chief of the president's administration, or if you like, the president's office in Kiev. So here he is. And since then, now you have a new function. You're the secretary, which means you're the head of the National Council for Investment, correct? Yes. And next to me is Dietmar Stüdemann, a very experienced German diplomat. Mr. Stüdemann, you were on posts in Moscow, for example, and then in very interesting time, 2000 till 2007, Mr. Stüdemann was German ambassador to Kiev. So you have had a beautiful revolution which could end in a peaceful way. The Orange Revolution, you were there in Kiev. And afterwards you were advisor to the Ukrainian president for a short time. And now, since then, Mr. Stüdemann is advising Deutsche Bank on business in the region. I myself, I'm a journalist. My name is Gerhard Gnauck. I have been a Die Welt correspondent in Warszawa, in Warsaw, in Poland, till this year, dealing with Poland, Ukraine, and other countries, Baltic countries, and now I'm writing also for Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung and other media. Still in Warsaw and still dealing with Ukraine. So welcome everybody, thank you. Let me say a few words about what we will do now. My first question to Mr. Ложкин, if we can enter that way before we come to the book. You were there the last 2 years at the side of President Poroshenko. Your country entered a state of war. Your country lost territory and had the most dramatic events in the last 30 years, one could say. You were working, as I know from your colleagues, sometimes 20 hours per day. You were sleeping in the office. What was for you in these 2 years the most dramatic event or the most dramatic moment?
First of all, good evening everybody, and I want to say thank you to organizers of today's event, and I'm happy that Ukrainian exhibition this year is really modern and different of previous years, and thank you for everybody who took part in this book fair. And I want to say several remarks before answering. First of all, in the United Media Holding, in my company, which I sold in 2013, there was another very good magazine, Forbes Ukraine, and Vladimir Fedoriным was editor-in-chief of Forbes, and thank you, Vladimir, for creation of this magazine with us and for joining to the project of Fourth Republic. And it was impossible with the graphic of presidential administration to prepare the book without participation of such professional editor and journalist as Vladimir. So thank you, Vladimir, again. And another important remark, when Poroshenko came to his office, we returned a lot of territories, because we lost these territories before he came to the office. It's an important remark. And I'm sure that with President Poroshenko, we continue to return Ukrainian territories, return Donbass, return Crimea back to Ukraine. And dramatic, there were a lot of dramatic moments. I think the most dramatic moment was when I say, yes, I'm ready to come to presidential administration. I think it was the most dramatic moment during these 2 years and several months. And
it was in May 2014?
Beginning of June.
Beginning of June 2014.
Something so like first or second.
Just a few weeks after Crimea was occupied and with events in eastern Ukraine unfolding.
Yeah. And of course, the situation in Ilovai's station in Debaltseve, it was really very dramatic moments. I wasn't involved myself into military issues, but I've seen this extreme nervous moment in presidential office, and it was really hard to work these days. And maybe the most dramatic moment was when we knew about the MH17 catastrophe. Yeah. And it was unbelievable that not military plane was attacked in Ukraine. It was unbelievable, with so many children, with citizens of different countries, and I was really shocked.
Yeah. So you were referring to Debaltseve and Ilovaisk, the great military clashes and, well, unfortunately, defeats of the Ukrainian forces and Russian forces directly involved. We will come to the question, of course, how can such a country attract investors? But this perhaps would be a question to Mr. Stüdemann. You're an expert not only on economy, but you, as far as I know, you know all the oligarchs personally in Ukraine. Maybe I give you two questions at the beginning. One, what is your impression of the book? You may have some critical remarks. You may have some thoughts to develop further. We also understand it is not a history book, it is a book of a participant, and I think we don't have so many books about this, so I think it's worthwhile. So please give some remarks about the book, and then give some remarks about how can a country attract investment in such a time.
Thank you very much. About the book, I think the book is interesting for various reasons. In first instance, for me, it is the autobiography of an entrepreneur. How did entrepreneurship develop at the end of the Soviet Union, going into independent Ukraine, and how to develop business in a way which is interesting, which helped to develop something of entrepreneurship in Ukraine in general terms, and how to develop what is extremely important, that is the new role of mass media. In that sense, I think the book is revealing, but it is a clear example how one could develop a business without becoming an oligarch. You see, I mean, Mr. Ложкин started from scratch. He started already as a pupil. He had brand new ideas, maybe that he had a certain sort of knowledge, how, for example, TV and the program of TV is something basic for the people, and they would like to know it, something which is elementary in the Western world, to have all these mass sort of journals on TV programs, and all the people connected with TV programs, all these stars, and all the big shots. I think in that sense he was clever, he was bright, and he liked to risk, and he was very successful in doing so. So that is an important example of creating business in early independent Ukraine. That is one thing. The other, Mr. Ложкин wanted to publish not only his own autobiography, he wanted also show himself as a political animal, as a politician who intends, or who has the intention, to change the course of political life in Ukraine, to create new, let's say, priorities, and to focus on the key question that is reform. In that sense, honestly, I have to say the book is a little bit too optimistic. I wouldn't say that optimism is totally out of view, but in the near and middle future, I see still an enormous amount of problems, and I'm not that sure that whether Mr. Ложкин's optimism with respect to reforms is founded already to that extent as he made it believe in us. The other element is the political elite in Ukraine. The political elite in Ukraine is still, of course, a major factor, but also a major problem. Because you have the political elite, which is closely connected with the business elite, and there the book is, in my opinion, not quite clear. There are a lot of arguments on that, but I think that is a point for the reader where he would expect either more clear-cut knowledge, clear-cut arguments, and clear-cut perspectives. That is the book, in rough terms. The question about investment, that is a very tricky question, because Mr. Ложкин, as all of us are aware, left office and is now the head of a sort of investment council, which tries to develop rules and, as far as I understood, a sort of institutional basis, though that investment will come. It is not a sort of state credit line or state guarantees, it is the attempt to create preconditions for secured investments. And there is still an enormous amount of things have to be done, I have to say. What is needed for a foreign investor basically is security, not in the sense of security, military or the ordinary notion of security, but security of his business. And security of his business would mean a state of law, legal guarantees that are going to survive the next government and the next presidency, so that we really have what we basically would call a state of law. And this state of law doesn't exist up to now, despite the fact that many things have already been done, legal reform and all that. But that is basically a piece of paper, let's be honest. But how to put that into practice and how to create institutions who are going to survive and not constantly being undermined because the people who are going to have the say in these institutions are constantly challenged or changed. That is a question for the future. What is needed is for the time now, because you need desperately investment now, big foreign investment now, is to create that sort of security. It will be very difficult, I think. There are proposals on the table, even Natalia Jaresko has made proposals. So it's not out, let's say, of any real perspective to create even in the short term something which would improve the conditions for foreign investment, because people are keen to go for investment, but what people basically want is security, legal security. That is one aspect. The other aspect is, and by that I'm going to finish my first lengthy involvement, is stability. What is needed is political stability, and political stability in this country means also business, because politics and business are deeply intertwined, and there you really need big changes. You have to get rid of this oligarchic system, but that's already another topic. Thank you.
I would follow up on that and give the word back to Mr. Ложкин. Do you want to answer directly?
I want to continue my answer.
Okay, I just may add that Mr. Stüdemann was right, of course, that our guest, Mr. Ложкин, was a successful businessman, because according to a recent rating of the most wealthy or richest Ukrainians, you are the number 30, as I understand, in the focus. You're not sure.
I have to say that.
You believe you are more down or more up?
Much more down.
Much more down, okay. I understand, as many rich people in Ukraine, you have lost assets in the last years through the crisis altogether, global crisis in Ukraine. Have you lost?
I haven't been in business last year, so really I can't say that I lost a lot or I earned. So really I wasn't in business. But back into Mr. Ambassador.
But you have, excuse me, you have stakes, I understand, and they, as I know, they lost worse through all this, and it could not be different.
I hope I will come back to business next year, and we will see what. I think that now it's time to come and to invest. And the highest profits, I think it's profits of such kind of period of time like now. But about optimism, I think that it's true. The book is quite optimistic, but I believe in business, in politics. First of all, you should be optimistic. You won't be successful if you are not optimistic. It's extremely important, and that's why I really, during all my business career and after in presidential office, tried to be optimistic in any situation, even very difficult situation. I think it's important. And I'm really not political animal. I think that I was a manager with this presidential administration, and I wasn't in public politics, and I don't want to be to continue some political career. I like business much more, And I saw, and I wrote about it in this book, I saw my coming into the power as army son, you know. It was really very, very difficult time for Ukraine, and I thought that I can be useful there. And that's it. And I'm not head of investment council, I'm secretary of investment council, and head of investment council is the president of Ukraine.
Basically, you have to do the job.
Yes, yes.
The question was, you have to do the job, basically.
And I fully agree with Mr. Ambassador about political stability. And I think that we tried to keep unity in coalition and in parliament during this 2.5 years. And I remember the statements of different states that this presidential administration, this president, this power would change September 2014, autumn 2014, winter 2015, for sure in the spring 2015, and I think each quarter or 2 quarters we know that there is some special issues or some investigation agencies that this power will change in nearest weeks, during more than 2 years. And I think that I try as an advisor of president to support keeping of this unity in future. And security of investments, it's extremely important thing, and that's why we voted constitutional changes, judiciary reform this June. And I think it's just the start of this process. We will have another quality of judiciary system during 3-5 years. But we will have a new Supreme Court, independent and professional, I think during 7-10 months. And it will be first important step of this judiciary reform. And Vladimir.
I would like to react to Ambassador's review. First of all, I completely agree with your opinion that the book is worth reading. But I have several points of difference. First of all, I think that the most interesting and maybe important part of this book, this I can say as a founding editor of Forbes Ukraine, is not entrepreneurial part, but the part that is devoted to description of vision of new Ukraine in European family. I think this is quite important to begin this discussion how we see ourselves. And before this presentation, I asked myself what is in this book that makes it important not only to Ukrainian readers but for European policy makers, opinion makers too. And I think that there are several ideas that are presented in this book. And first of all, I think that all our allies, I think that all people in the world who love freedom, love democracy are Ukrainian allies. Our allies should understand that political turbulence in Ukraine is to stay for years, if not for decades, because this is a part of a process of growing new European political nation. And without political scandals, without new emerging political forces, without political cycles, I don't know any country in Europe that grew up into modern market economy and democracy without this kind of birth pangs.
You know, this media needs scandals. And
yes, of course. So please remember, Ukraine here to stay, and Ukraine here to stay as a democratic state. So political stability in its current form maybe, but not in form of governments lasting for decades, and so on and so on. This is the first point, and I think it's very important for our European friends to remember and understand. Second point.
Okay.
Second point. We think that to become part of European community in the short definition of this term, Ukraine should become a problem solver, from troublemaker into problem solver. And of course, we in media help to create the impression that Ukraine is on the brink, that tomorrow Ukraine will
fall apart or surrender to Russia.
Oh, maybe everything you wish. But I think that it's quite natural. And already Ukraine is a problem solver. Ukraine is a responsible global citizen. And I mean that opposing to Kremlin's aggression, Ukraine already plays a very important role into maintaining international law and order, and we and our European allies should remember about this. And last but not least, I think that successful Ukraine should and will be a part of solution of this so-called post-Soviet transition, because successful, prosperous Ukraine will be a crucial player on post-Soviet space, and it will help to transform not only itself but Belarus, Russia, Central Asian states, and so on and so on. And in this, I think European Union and Ukraine are very, very close allies, because we all very interested in stability and prosperity of this space. Thank you.
Sooner or later, we would also touch upon the Berlin negotiations of 2 days ago with Merkel, Hollande, Putin and Poroshenko, whether there is something new. But first of all, Mr. Stüdemann wanted to react.
Yes, thank you very much. I do not want to defend myself because I didn't mention the notion of vision, or the book as a sort of visionary tale, how Ukraine should and will look like in a couple of years. Of course, I agree with you totally. Ukraine is not going to disappear from the geographical map. Ukraine is going to become a successful, flourishing country if it is doing what was already told by all your presidents. You see, I mean, you had so many visionaries on your presidential level, and all the visions are the same. What is needed is democracy, what is needed is transparency, we have to cope with the transformation, we have to listen to the people, and we have to express and fulfill the wish of the electorate, and not to focus exclusively on particular interests. All that was said already many times. So
excuse me, did former President Kuchma, who was president 1995 to 2004, he was not supporting transparency, he was not really supporting democracy.
You see, I mean, that is the problem. Everybody talked about the necessity of democratization, creation of democratic institutions, but none of these presidents did anything to that respect in reality. You see, I mean, that the problem is all the time between vision and realization. And I think we should not any longer, that counts for everybody, even for Germany, we should not focus any longer on visions, we should focus on realizations, we should focus on practical deeds to improve the situation and to make people believe into the future of this country under the present or another leadership. One of our major politicians, Helmut Schmidt, said once, if you are talking about visions in politics, go to a psychiatrician, because there you could get help. But what is needed is practical work, is the realization what we have promised, that we have to fulfill it. So I think the focus should be on that. To some extent it is. I wouldn't blame Mr. Ложкин that he missed that totally. But I think the main focus in political life and in everything which is going to be written, in everything that is going to be said, should focus on that. Thanks.
Yeah, by the way, I agree, but please remember, when Germany started in 45, it had a good occupation in a way, and it had a state of peace and not a state of war. So sometimes I wonder, what do we Germans expect from Ukraine? We really expect miracles, actually. But now back to Mr. Ложкин.
One important remark. I fully agree with Mr. Stüdemann that we have a huge problem with realization, with execution. And when I started to analyze what do we have in investment for investors in Ukraine, I found that we really don't have not taxes solving, not security issues, but we don't have projects. If you have $10 billion and want to come to Ukraine to invest this money, you can't do it because you don't have projects where you can do invest. No projects at all. Maybe 2-3 billion, not more. And it's another huge problem.
You mean Ukraine has to develop these problems,
exactly.
these projects?
I think one of the most important goals of Investment Council is to push creation such projects. We don't want to do it ourselves, but we should push government, we should push state-owned companies, ministries, private investors, because you know we need approximately $150–200 billion during 20 years FDI into Ukraine. So let's say it's
foreign direct investments for non-economists.
Thank you. And it's approximately, let's say, $7–10 billion every year. And we don't have projects even for $10 billion. It's a problem of execution, a problem of realization, because we have a lot of strategies of reforms in different sectors and so on, but we don't have projects. And now we are discussing with different investors, and they ask me, guys, we want to see these projects on the table. If you want $1 billion from me, we have such kind of investors. They are ready to invest into Ukraine, $1–2 billion each investor. But they don't have projects in any sectors. It's a mess. Good news, we have where to invest. And now we should push all responsible people to do it. To my pity, it's not done yet, but I am sure that we will do it.
What would that mean, a project where others can invest? Would it mean a successful company in Ukraine where an investor can come? Or what sort of project do you mean?
No, I mean first of all, it's greenfield. First of all, even not privatization. Privatization also.
Greenfield investment.
Greenfield investment.
An investor
new plants.
Builds a plant.
Exactly. Or some joint ventures with participation of the state. Or some big privatization projects. But greenfields, I think it's first of all. And another important thing, I think that it's pushing of important political decisions. I agree with Mr. Stüdemann again. Like a land law. It's, I think, one of big mistakes of coalition, which voted 2 weeks ago about the continuation of moratorium about land.
There is still no
for next year
free trade of land in Ukraine. Yeah.
And I think we should solve this problem. Really, today's power solved another important problem about tariffs. And now we have real tariffs for gas, and it's extremely important. But it's another important step to raise money. It's changing law about land.
Ladies and gentlemen, before I open the floor to you, maybe one last question. So you prepare if you have any questions, but of course short questions, we hope. But my last question to you would be to Mr. Ложкин and Mr. Stüdemann. The four great powers, Putin, Merkel, Hollande, Poroshenko, met in Berlin, and as I read in Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung today, it was a very hard and very clear discussion with Putin or against Putin or whatever, and the presidents and chancellor agreed on a new roadmap which could give concrete steps of peace, and in end of November the ministries of foreign affairs will meet again. My question to you is this again playing on time and prolonging the process, whatever, or is it a real progress this time? What is your short comment?
I think any negotiations is a progress. You know, it's better than no negotiations. But we will say about real steps only when we will see the roadmap which participators of negotiations in Berlin decided to prepare. And I think it will be prepared. And after it, we will see if it will be accepted. It would be a huge step in implementation of Minsk agreement.
Mr. Stüdemann.
Of course, it is better to talk than not to talk, but these talks have
I think you mean the other way. You mean better to talk than to shoot, correct? That's the point.
Sure. But basically, I think talks have to have a specific goal, and whether the roadmap is already a specific goal, looking into what had happened already during the time since Minsk II, there are regular discussions, there are regular even negotiations, but to no avail. And in that sense, I'm a little bit doubtful. Ukraine is in a desperate situation because, I mean, you are a sovereign country and you have foreigners, foreign military forces within your country. Moscow, of course, said that's not the case. But this time, and I think for the first time in such a more or less open way, they agreed that they are not only influential with respect to the so-called separatists or terrorists or however they are called, but that Moscow has also a leverage to look for progress. But whether that is going to happen, I think what Putin does all the time is to test. And even this time he's going to test not only Ukraine, but far more the West. Whether the West is prepared to look, if you look at it from the time running, whether, let's say, agreements are going to be reached to prepare for elections in the Lugansk and Donetsk district. Honestly, I really have to tell you, I have my doubts. Because it is, again, the game to try to find out whether the West had this long breath to go through all these up and downs. A proposal is made, it will be discussed. In the end, a sort of a compromise has to be found. Which compromise? Basically, Ukraine, I agree with everybody from Ukraine that Ukraine basically can't go for a compromise because it's your country. It is your sovereignty. But on the other hand, one has to find ways and means to influence in Moscow. My guess would be that not the roadmap is the main thing. The main thing are the leaders in this separatist districts. If Moscow is really prepared to go for a sort of solution, it should find different people who are moderate, who look into the future of the region that is the people, and not so much of staying in power and robbing the country all the time. So I'm not that sure, but I'm sure it is better to talk than to shoot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was actually could be topic for another hour of discussion. We just started, but as I promised, are there any questions on behalf of the public? Please go ahead, and could you introduce yourself?
Hello, my name's Vladimir. And I'm an Australian who is currently investing in Ukraine. I have my publishing company that I've opened up in Ukraine at the moment. And one of my concerns is rule of law. And I want guarantees, because I would invest further in Ukraine if I knew that. And so I've got a few projects going there at the moment, but I would have other ones there if I was, rule of law is my number one concern. What can you tell me about that? How can you guarantee that I know if I take a matter to court and I will win?
That's why we voted changes to constitution of our judicial system. And now, by a new procedure with participation of National Anti-Corruption Bureau, we will find new judges into new Supreme Court as a first stage, and during 3 years to all courts of Ukraine. So I think that really, let's say 4 or 5 years, we will have extremely different judicial system in Ukraine. And we can't say that the rule of law in one moment will appear, it's a process, that is the truth. But another important thing, maybe it should be only about big investors, but maybe not only. I think we need a new law about direct agreements, government or maybe local powers with investor, with a list of guarantees. I mean, not guarantees of business risk, but guarantees of changes of regulation in the sector, or changes of regulation in taxes or something like this. And these agreements could be signed by, for example, British or continental law, and it could be extra guarantee for investor for understanding the return on investments and the changing on environment. So first of all, of course, it's judicial reform, and I think it was one of the most important steps of Poroshenko administration during these 2 years, and we've done it, and it was really quite difficult to vote constitutional changes. It's 2/3 of parliament, and new activities of investment council. Our goal is changing of law about agreements of government and investors.
I would perhaps add, if there are no other questions, I've learned just recently that you have a new institution which is a business ombudsman. And I've heard that people in the region in other countries are very interested in this aspect. So a businessman who feels that authorities have treated him not in the accurate manner can go there, and it's not a court, I understand. How does this work, the business ombudsman? Could you say a few words about it?
Business ombudsman, it's another thing. It's supporting of investors in some exact issues. For example, they have some problems with some regulations or some prosecutor office or somebody else. But it's a little bit different thing. I believe, first of all, in institutional changes. If you want to have institutional changes, business ombudsman, anything you will do won't be successful. You need to change judicial system. You need to change other law. Only after it we can say about changing of rules in the country.
I would like to add only that everybody who follows Ukrainian events agree that for the last 2 years Ukraine made much more reforms than for 23 years after its independence. This is the first point. The second point, unfortunately, it's too late, too little, and my prediction is that we'll see new wave of reforms because we should change a lot in order to realize Ukrainian potential, Ukrainian proximity to European market, Ukrainian very talented human capital, and so on and so on. And I think that you made very wise decision by investing in this stage, because when everybody will see that Ukraine is growing, it will be much more expensive.
Well, I would like perhaps to ask, following up on this Minsk negotiations now, I understand that one of the points which was talked about in Berlin now was that the armed forces should move apart in certain areas. That's one point. And the other is a sort of roadmap which will be verified then. But I would like to ask you, Mr. Ложкин, just what is your feeling? Will Ukraine regain control over its eastern border till the next Frankfurt Book Fair? That's one question. So within 1 year. And the second question, I believe, is also very serious. Who will rebuild Donbass?
I think that Donbass will rebuild investors, and I hope our European partners will support in it with guarantees to investors from Germany, from France, Great Britain, and really
And what about the Russians?
Maybe, why not?
All this mess?
Yeah, why not? But I hope that we will have control on the border to the next Frankfurt Book Fair.
That would be...
May I ask, do you mean Russian reparations?
Russia is inside Ukrainian territory. They might disagree with that all the time, but the facts and the proofs are so manifold that nobody should start from the assumption that Russia is not responsible for that, what had happened in that region. So, I mean, they have to take part into reshaping, replanning, and creating a sort of new Donbass and the whole southeastern Ukrainian area. But until there is still a lot of water is running down the Dnieper into the Black Sea. Let's be honest. And I think the worst thing is, as in Syria, it is the people who do suffer.
There is a great politician in Ukraine now who came from abroad. Well, you've had several. You've had ministers Yaresko, Abramovichus, and you have the governor of Odessa, Saakashvili, from Georgia. When we talked before about the book, Mr. Stüdemann said, well, the book is a bit maybe did not really touch on Saakashvili and on his long-term serious engagement, as if I understood well, your criticism.
The book didn't touch too much on what Mr. Ложкин intended to do, that is to involve foreign experts or foreign politicians into Ukrainian affairs. Mrs. Yaresko was invited, of course. I mean, she has this Ukrainian background, but nevertheless, until recently she was an American citizen, and Mr. Abramovichus was also a foreigner who became Ukrainian. But both of them left office pretty soon. Why? What has happened? Was the experiment unsuccessful, or was it specific reasons that they left? My understanding is they left because they couldn't perform to the extent they wanted to change the course of politics in Ukraine, especially in the field of economics and economic development, and in the field of finances.
Thank you. I don't believe that it was unsuccessful because a lot of foreigners still in Ukrainian power. For example, head of national police, she is Georgian still. Or Mr. Saakashvili, who came as a governor in 2015, he's still governor of Odessa region. So changes in government, you know, it's natural because new coalition and new government. And I believe that we need to look for the best people, not only from Ukraine but from any countries, to infect by these people old system. We have a special chapter in the book about foreigners in Ukrainian power, and I think it was an interesting experiment, and hopefully it would be one of successful chapters in the history 10-20 years.
I agree that this experiment is still going on. I think that the idea to invite foreign ministers or foreign officials was quite a good one, because Ukraine finds itself in a very interesting situation. Yes, it's at war, but it tries to remain open country, to remain a country that is open to foreign talents, foreign technologies, foreign ideas, and I think maybe this will be one of the most lasting impacts of Boris in government administration to hold the door open. Myself, I came to Ukraine 6 years ago from Moscow to launch Forbes Ukraine, and I think it's very important for Ukraine to try to attract the best people, the best talents, and the best expertise that is in the world.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fedorin, Mr. Ложкин, Herr Stüdemann. We are running out of time. There's one question, but okay, we have 2 more minutes, so please, very few sentences.
Danke. Ich habe gerade Frage zu Ihnen als Medienvertreter. Also, nein, dann ich frage in Russisch auch. У меня есть вопрос к корреспонденту, как представителю медиа. Ja, also zu Ihnen. Wie sehen Sie, welcher Platz hat Ukraine in deutschen Medien? Ihre Meinung? Weil zum Beispiel gestern habe ich gesehen, einen Bericht über diese Treffen, diese 4 Personen, Sie genannt gerade, diese 4 Personen. Und ich habe gesehen, alle 3 Personen, aber nicht Poroschenko. Verstehen Sie mich, ja? Вопрос в том, вы поняли, да? Вчера я видел передачу, где была о встрече 4 президентов, и там были все показаны, кроме Порошенко. Вопрос в том, как медиа представляют Украину немецкую.
Ladies and gentlemen, the answer is very, very simple. There were 2 topics in Berlin in the negotiations on Wednesday. One was Ukraine, and there were 4 partners, and the other was Syria, and there were 3 partners. And these photos are from the round table, Merkel, Putin, and Hollande about Syria. And thank God, Poroshenko has not to solve the problems in Syria. So that is the first answer. And the second, if you asked about the place of Ukraine in German media, well, I could just say, I don't like to talk in the name of other people, but I think I could say in the name of most of my German colleagues. Many of them have seen the Orange Revolution. Many of them have been in Donbass, have been in Crimea. 3 of them have been in Ukrainian barracks in Crimea during the siege when Russian troops were outside the barracks. And I understand perfectly well that such events, if you are under siege in a castle, this leaves an impression on your life, in a way. And so I can say about German colleagues that they have made very personal experiences in Ukraine. It has impressed them very, very much. I would include myself. And Timothy Snyder, the American historian who has worked a lot on Eastern European history, he was recently in Warsaw on a panel, and he was asked that question. And Timothy Snyder answered, I could not believe my ears. He said, German journalists, and he said, dziennikarki, journalistinnen, German female journalists, saved the honor of the German nation with their work in Ukraine. By going to the field, by going to Eastern Ukraine with a block and a pencil and writing what they see, not believing in propaganda, not believing in, whatever comes down to you. So with these words of Timothy Snyder, I respect very much. I would like to conclude this discussion, and I wish that your country, and not only your country, will have such observers who go with the pencil and the paper and write what they see. So I think that's a good word, final word at the Frankfurt Book Fair. Thank you very much, and bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a German version of the book here. If you like, who wants one, take one. And the Ukrainian consulate in Frankfurt will have by Wednesday the English version also, and the Russian and Ukrainian versions. Thank you.
You want German one? This is English.
I have the English one. I don't need it. You need German or English?
Спасибо, Борис Ильич. Спасибо.
Ich gehe jetzt noch mal, ich habe noch einen Schirm. Ich gehe jetzt noch.
Татьяна, если можно. Спасибо. Тут нужно много писать, но что память.
Вкладывая фонд на рынок с реальной экономикой. Взаимозалежно, абсолютно.
Дякую.
Давайте. Десь у нас на стенді сидів почує. Я вважаю, що Німеччина це один з головних стратегічних партнерів України, дуже точно, пов'язаний з Україною, європейським проєктом. Те, що було після, вже не є в книзі, тому що просто вона вже була. Говорячи, цікава історія. Ми з Харкова, і Харков, як на мене, якщо ми там говоримо про медіа, я вважаю, що певний час був столицею незалежних комерційних медіа. І перші газети, і перші телестанції, така як «Донець», наприклад, і перші радіостанції комерційні, вони з'явилися в Харкові. Тобто роль Харкова будівництво такої незалежної країни, як на мене, не досі розкрите ще. Ну, це про наступний продукт. Но вообще я журналистом же начинал, поэтому я из журналистики пришел, то есть я понимаю, как писать, и как у меня был ТВ-продакшн, и я был телеведущим. Как у вас?
Я думаю, нормально. Ну, надо задоволить, так сказать, панель.